evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info coming at you the day after the conclusion of the weekend at Sears Point or the Sonoma Raceway, whichever you prefer. And a wild weekend, and congratulations, first and foremost, to Daniel Suarez on his first career Cup Series victory. A tremendous accomplishment, given everything that's happened in his career. We'll certainly talk about the last place battles there and everything in between. Got so many people to thank. I mean, so many people that met along the way there this weekend. I think it was one of our best Sears Point weekends yet, actually, quite honestly. Given everything that was happening at the track there, we'll talk about all of that. We got our trivia segment and some little something for our show and tell segment here as well. Lots to cover on this, and we'll jump right into it here. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I know it's a little bit later after the show here, but I think the response on social media today has been very much the same as we saw yesterday there. Again, with Daniel Suarez now punching his ticket into the playoffs, although we're getting so much closer to 16 winners in the regular season now. With 10 races to go and only 4 spots left open for drivers that are not winners but still in the top 16, and NBC hasn't even called a single race yet. I think that's going to be something else to talk about here for sure. Yeah, it was a wild weekend again, and I think I would be remiss to not thank a couple people right off the beginning of this here. First of all, Ben Schneider did a great job this weekend. Ben was able to do some coverage there for the K&N series. It was not his first race he's been to, not the first time he's been in California, but the first time he's been to the Sears Point track there. He shadowed me on Friday there for the Truck Series practice when we had a bit of a story kind of unfold right in front of us there with G2G Racing, and we'll be talking about that tonight as well. But he did a fantastic job this weekend. I'm glad that we can get both now our guest contributor with Ben as well as our staff writer William Saki to the racetrack here. Now LASCAR is 3 people, and 3 people now that have done work over at the track here. So big thanks to Ben there for his help this weekend. On that. William Saki, I mentioned him as well. He was at the Road America weekend for the IndyCar series. I know that's a bit outside of what we usually talk about on the side with the Cup series here. But again, another fine job out there, him at his home track. We're looking to get him covered over at the Cup series and Xfinity series weekend at Road America coming up there as well, which will be fantastic there. I know that he's a big fan of Road America about as much as I am over at Sears Point, and he did a fine job there with the open wheel stuff there. So all that's on there. We had some interviews as well with Joey Hand and Todd Bodine. Again, big thanks to Ben for being able to find Todd there when we were kind of going through the garage area on Friday. Had a great interview with him. Got to talk about a little bit of field filler stuff there. If you check out his interview, he was very quick to correct me when I was talking about Arnold Motorsports being the team that he drove for the Truck Series. Of course, the Germain team, kind of stepped in at that point. That Don was only involved with the team for just a short time, at least from his view there. And then you had the Germain team, and of course, Germain is what was the team that they had been around as long as it had been until just very recently when they closed down. So it's good to be able to kind of revisit that story there, and I thought he was really cool to talk to. I've never actually interviewed any of the Bodines before, so I think I had ridden in a car with Brett Bodine, a pace car around Sears Point years ago. But that was the closest thing on that. So that was pretty cool there too. So I hope you guys enjoyed that content at the same time. So gosh, I mean, where even to start? I guess we'll go ahead and go back into the Cup Series race here, kind of like what we do on our usual shows here. Again, Daniel Suarez mentioning his win, a tremendous top 3 in this event here too. I think it was amazing with Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell being so consistently fast as they were in the event, and that was good to see. Bubba Wallace out of the race early with the engine failure. It turned out to be the only DNF in the Cup Series race there too. I mean, really, just wild in general. I guess I'll talk more about the Suarez thing right off the bat. I think one thing that surprised me, I when I was talking about it and thinking about what steps he's had to go through in his career and to get to that point. I'd completely forgotten about the time he was driving for the Gaunt brothers when he was very nearly a last car feature. I think there was a race at Vegas where he had the car that just lost an engine or just shut down crossing the stripe in 2020, and missed the Daytona 500. He was in a wreck in that year, scaling back to a reduced schedule and just being just at a complete career crossroads. And then again, I think to have redeveloped his career at the Trackhouse effort and come very close to winning the Bristol Dirt Race last year, the inaugural one. Joey Logano had to work very hard to get around him there. Seemed like that was going to be the first time they punched their ticket. They had a lot of mechanical issues on the road courses last year, which I know was frustrating for him given his road course background. Then towards the end of the year, I mean, they kind of almost fell off the map in terms of getting talked about a lot. I know they ran the Good Sam scheme for a lot of late 2021, and seemed like they weren't getting talked about as much. But then they bring in the next gen car. Ross Chastain finishes last in the Daytona 500, and then, of course, at COTA, where Suarez himself was so good at the very beginning of the race, Chastain gets his first win, and immediately, suddenly, he's like the big name. I mean, William Byron and the other faces from other teams are still being in the mix, but Chastain is just having just a complete career year, and Suarez still hadn't had his first win. I can't imagine, how much pressure that must have had after everything else he'd been through. And yet he's handled it just remarkably well, and the team has stayed supportive of him. I've wondered about, how committed they really were to Suarez independently, or just looking for anybody that was going to score them their first win. I thought when Chastain got his first, that was going to be an issue. But Suarez, even then, was so supportive of this team and just all in. There's that great video online of Chastain and Suarez, high-fiving each other in the first corner there after Chastain took the win. And it's great. I think that this team has brought so much excitement and positive energy into the sport. Not to say that it's been lacking in the sport, but I think it's something that, maybe we didn't know that we needed, and yet it's there, and it's like, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I think clearly, I mean, you can't buy a T-shirt from Ross Chastain's first win. All that's about as hard to find as anything from the Clash these days. And I imagine with Suarez, it'll be the same thing. And that only augurs well for the sport as well. And so it's a great story. It was a thrill to be a part of it there, just a small part of it. Of course, I was there for the last place thing, and I was in turn 11 when he came down to the stripe. I do have some video that I'm looking to post on YouTube here. Lastbro also got some fantastic video from turn 7. He actually got the crowd reaction to when Kyle Busch spun out in turn 7 during the Cup Series race. So I'm looking to get that up there pretty soon. I'll probably just smash it all together into one video, kind of like I did with a lot of the other stuff late last season, and we'll do something with that. But absolutely tremendous. And both Trackhouse cars are in there. And it's huge. I mean, this is huge, and I know that it reminds me a lot of when like Elliott Sadler won his first race at Bristol in 2001. Some first time winner is already special, but when the driver is such a down to earth guy and has a great fan base, already, even after so many years of trying to get going, and Sadler didn't have to wait quite as long as Suarez did. It makes it a great story on that. And I mentioned it a bit in the article there, but I'm sure everybody else has already had plenty of superlatives to bring up and describe, and well-deserved at the same time there too. So very cool. And again, kudos to everything that happened there at the same time. Yeah, and quite honestly, I was shocked. I'm wearing the Martin Truex shirt today. I picked this up over the weekend. Because I had picked Truex to win the race, and I fully expected that at Sears Point we were going to have the same body of drivers that are always up there. Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, I figured they were easily going to be a factor in it, and they were at one point or another. And the Joe Gibbs guys, and especially with the improvement of 2311, with now Kurt Busch with his history at Sears Point winning in 2011. And, Bubba Wallace showing a lot of improvement last year, overcoming that flat tire to have the best run he'd had in his 3 previous attempts here. I thought it was going to be a Toyota and Chevy show. I certainly didn't think it was going to be Daniel Suarez leading a bunch of Fords at the finish with the Gibbs guys in last car contention. You had Bubba Wallace dropping out of the race with the engine failure at the beginning. Last Bro described that he just came down the hill, just a big trail of smoke going into turn 4. Luckily he was okay. He was able to pull. In fact, he was able to use the runoff area, so the cleanup didn't even seem to take too long, getting him down the hill there. But the Gibbs guys, just very strange. Just, Denny Hamlin seemed like he was going to be pretty fast in qualifying in the first round. Led his group, I believe, in practice. And then in qualifying itself, he was the slowest of the 10 to make it to the final round. Seemed like he was constantly getting muscled out of the way by somebody in turn 11. Kyle Busch gets spun out by Chase Briscoe in the late stages. He's in the back. Truex there was a part of the race there in the last 10, 15 laps where there was just a stack up of cars behind him, like Austin Dillon. A few of the other Chevy teams were right behind him, and then the lap later he comes down pit road and he's getting fresh tires, and Logano and Christopher Bell come in for fresh tires, and so you literally have all 4 of the Gibbs guys back there, and there's 31 cars on the lead lap. Amazingly low attrition. I thought low attrition. I thought this was going to be. I thought it was going to be flat tires. I thought it was going to be mechanical issues. I thought it was going to be hard hits. I thought it was going to be a mess in this race, even with just the 36 chartered guys there for the smallest field that we've had in a Cup Series race at Sears Point. But it absolutely wasn't the case. It was a very different situation there this time around. I haven't watched the broadcast yet. I'm looking to do that in the near future here, probably when NASCAR posts the full version online there. But I'll be interested to see how it played on TV. I tuned a lot of that out for most of the weekend there. Yeah, very unusual. You had all the Gibbs guys at the back of the field. You had pit miscues for the Hendrick Motorsports guys. You had Kyle Larson with the wheel coming off. And as of right now, I suppose we're all still waiting to hear what infraction that's going to be. I anticipate they're going to get the same book thrown at them that's happened with Denny Hamlin and so many of these other organizations, Justin Haley, and to not have, whether it's going to be a situation with Cliff Daniels, or what other crew members I guess it's going to be as part of the suspension, could be really challenging, especially going into this part of the schedule. Luckily they have their win already back at Fontana, so they're looking good in the points. But in terms of building momentum into the playoffs, 10 races may seem like a long time, but we'll cross that line pretty quickly there before long, getting into August. I mean, yeah, we're mid-June. We're talking about end of August going into the playoffs. That gap's gonna close pretty quick. And that's basically going to be almost half of that already, if that happens. So we'll see. Chase Elliott's situation was a pretty freaky one there. The view I had from the media center was right past turn 12. I was at the front corner of the building, so I had a bird's eye view of Chase Elliott's stall, and I was just kind of watching him. Andrew, who was sitting next to me, it was actually his first race that he was at the track. He was kind of filming the pit stop. I believe he was filming or he was taking pictures. I'm not sure either way, but either way, he got a great view of it too. But Chase Elliott was in his pit stall, and you can see the guy trying to get the single lug there on the left rear wheel of his car, and Chase starts taking off, and he's pulled along with it because the gun is still engaged in the rim and trying to pull him along there. So luckily somebody was able to get him to back up, but then that wasn't enough to overcome what seemed to be a situation where he was actually pitted outside the box. And so you had a devastating penalty in that situation that he did overcome. He overcame, but he didn't win the race, but he got a top 10 out of it. And perhaps that last caution kind of helped out in that situation. But it could have been disastrous for him. It could have been disastrous for a couple of other drivers out there. Certainly didn't expect, pit road to be as much of an issue. Pit stops are usually very spare at Sears Point. Obviously, with the race distance being what it is, with stage cautions kind of throwing out the window traditional pit strategies, and usually you'll have a caution in the last stage, but it'll be so close to the finish, kind of like last year, that nobody's going to be willing to give up all that track position, especially if you're going to have 20 plus drivers on the lead lap coming down to the finish. So that was kind of the situation here. But then you had this one here where you had a caution halfway through the stage, and you did have a situation where it was going to be a strategy call. So very Very bizarre situation there at the same time. But then cruising through all of this, was again, as I mentioned earlier, Suarez, of course, with all the laps. I believe he led 47 laps of that one. And Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell, and again, just amazing for both of them. Buescher looked like a dang world beater out there. He was like right on Suarez's bumper for the short run there early in one of those last runs, and it really looked like it was kind of like Clint Boyer and Kurt Busch back in 2012. I was kind of getting flashbacks to that a bit, and then but again, track position is so key at Sears Point. I mean, you could have a car that's almost falling apart. In the case of like Jerry Nadeau in 2002, and you could probably just stay right up there unless something catastrophic happens. But there was a long enough run. Buescher's car couldn't keep up the pace, but he was able to defend the second spot and continuing a long history at this track as well, where the driver that's going to be in second place is sometimes a really surprising name as well. Bobby Hamilton did it. Sterling Marlin did it. Drivers that you wouldn't ordinarily think of being particularly good at road racing, even in the time that they were driving. And Buescher certainly qualifies. I was amazed that, of course, Buescher had that runner-up run at Daytona last year that was undone by the disqualification. The one infamously on the show here that I was blathering on about something else. You guys try to get my attention. Like, Buescher's disqualified. That one there. I'm not going to forget that too soon. But with that one excluded, Buescher's last three top five finishes have all come on road courses. The Charlotte Roval race last year, the Daytona road course in 2020. So now 3 consecutive years with his last 3 top 5 finishes, all on road courses. Chris Buescher, of course, won the Xfinity race at Mid-Ohio in 2014, but not a driver that you would typically expect to be a contender up there. I don't even remember what he did at COTA. He probably had a better run than I recall him actually having. But that was fantastic for him, and I'm glad to see that he got interviewed and so forth on that. Michael McDowell, same thing. How many times do we hear that Michael McDowell is like, oh, he's a great plate racer and he's an even better road course driver. But every time he comes to Sears Point, it always seems like there's some problem he has one way or the other. 9 previous starts, and admittedly, some of them with lower equipment like Phil Parsons Racing, or the waning years with Michael Waltrip Racing and so forth. But getting into Front Row Motorsports ride he's had this last few years, he still hadn't had a finish better than 14th. And all of a sudden he comes into this one, and not only is he up there, but he seemed to kind of just stay in the mix all day, and he firmly had that third place spot for so much of that last run there after the snafu with Larson, and was able to kind of hang on and get that run, and it was great to see. Even Kevin Harvick couldn't really do anything with him. So it was impressive. I mean, there was a lot of drivers that really just impressed the heck out of me. And it was good to see, good to see from all three of them. Good to see for Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Brad Keselowski joins his teammate in the top 10. So, really cool stories from there. One driver that, especially after NASCAR Man was talking about him during the race too, Joey Hand with a great run. Certainly didn't need that caution that happened with the Larson situation. I think if that didn't happen, we would very easily probably be talking about a career best run for Rick Ware Racing in a cup race, which would have been amazing, especially at a road course. Rick Ware has a long and proud history of competing on the road courses. He told me about that back in 2016 when he was getting Cody Ware to the field there driving for Premium Motorsports at the time. There's a long history of that organization where they, of course, nowadays they have their hands in just about everything from IndyCar, where William was, to where, Cup Race, where Ben and I were, and so forth. It was just a really crazy situation. But Joey seemed like he was very calm about, getting a good run there. A bit disappointed that, he stayed out a bit too long. In 2003, we had something very similar to this. Ron Fellows and Boris Said were driving for really fast teams with MB2 Motorsports and DEI back then, and they stayed out too long on a caution. They still finished 6th and 7th, but they probably could have been 2nd or 3rd, if not contenders for the win, if caution hadn't come at about the same time there. Obviously, a different time without stage racing, and now in radically different cars, but the comparison's about the same at the same time too. So, definitely another thing to look at there at the same time. One thing I thought was funny with Hand is he was mentioning that he was racing AJ Allmendinger very closely at the end. They were battling for about 19th and 20th for the finish of it. I'm not sure if Hand knew at the time that I was interviewing him that Allmendinger didn't have any power steering, because he was saying, okay, AJ and I have raced each other for years. I trust him. I'm not going to run to the outside of just anybody. I know he's got, he's not going to do anything that's going to be crazy. But then, of course, unfortunately, luckily for Hand, it didn't actually have an incident. But Allmendinger was just absolutely fighting that car around there with no power steering, and just impressive. I wasn't able to catch up with him after the race, but certainly, I don't know if anybody else did. Hopefully, somebody did, because I think that would have been interesting there as well. But great job for Joey Hand. I think that's still the best road course finish for Rick Ware Racing. Not their best overall in the Cup Series, but they're right up there. So it's definitely another one to kind of look at there at the same time. But at the flip side, and I touched on this earlier again, Bubba Wallace, your last place finisher of the Toyota Save Mart 350, the first last place run for the number 23 in the history of that race, and the fewest laps completed by a last place finisher of the Toyota Save Mart 350 since Clint Boyer's disastrous 2016 season, I believe it was, when he was driving for H. Scott Motorsports, had a electrical fire under the dashboard that forced him to pull off the track. I believe it was after 5 laps back then. It was just catastrophic in that case. Luckily, he was able to get out of the car okay, much as Bubba Wallace was in this case here, but a very early exit. I was anticipating, and again, nothing I seemed to anticipate in this race was how it played out. It was very much a surprise, certainly to me. I don't know how much it was to most everybody else, but that was kind of the situation that happened there. Usually the last place finisher in the last few years has completed 30 or more laps, even with the different configuration that had fewer laps than we saw on Sunday. So it was very surprising to see somebody drop out of the race so quickly. Cody Ware had multiple inspection failures on the weekend and wasn't able to practice, wasn't able to qualify, got out there, had to do the pass through, was 20 seconds behind the entire field. But with the vagaries of the stage racing, and I regret not making a bigger point of this because it's certainly worth celebrating, Cody was able to kind of cycle his way back up there and get a stage point. I mean, that's fantastic for him. I think that's great. Between that and Joey Hand's performance in the number 15 car, I think that was a very good day for Rick Ware Racing. Even if the results may not have necessarily shown it, I think there's a lot of potential there and a lot of reason to be excited. I know Joey in particular is very excited about getting to Road America because that's a track he's even more comfortable with than this one, even though he's born in the Sacramento area, and this is basically his home track here. So that'll be another one to look at there at the same time. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out. You'll notice in my article I don't have an interview with Bubba Wallace. This is something that has kind of come up more with whenever a last place finisher is a big name. If I see there's a lot of media members that are already surrounding a driver, I generally don't interview them. And usually by the time I get to the person, they really don't want to talk to anybody. They're just over it. I believe there was a race in 2017 at Sears Point where it came down to AJ Allmendinger and Jamie McMurray, who both conked out about the same time. And both of them had plenty of media there that got a quote. Generally, my question is always going to be, what happened out there? How had the race been going to that point? How had the weekend been going to that point? Those are the kind of questions that are always going to be covered. As much as I complain about the mainstream, the television broadcast, if they're there, generally, I usually don't bother unless there's something else I can bring to the table. I don't like to ask questions for reasons other than genuinely wanting to know the answer. If I feel like the answer is already out there, there's nothing more I can do. So I know there were a lot of people that already were talking to Bubba. I know Front Stretch had a person there, and I used their quote in the article. That's a big reason why. I think, again, as I mentioned in the broadcast problems video, at some point the story is over, and I think it's best that when everybody's looking this way, I try to look this way and get that too. So, it wasn't meant to be anything disrespectful to Bubba Wallace. Actually, quite the opposite. I think probably at that point the last thing he needed was me bounding up there, reminding him that he got last for the 3rd time in his career. I would have been happy to talk to him at Phoenix because apparently he wasn't, nobody else had talked to him. He even ghosted the NBC people there too. But, getting an early start on the offseason, I can hardly blame him at that point because I know at that time he was really frustrated with Corey LaJoie. Really expected at that point that we were going to have a bit of a busier garage area too. That's the other thing that sometimes happens when you have a big name that finishes last. Sometimes you'll hear like a squeal in the background, and then somebody else is pulled into the garage area. This was very much the case. I think it was in 2019 when Cody Ware had heat exhaustion and carbon monoxide poisoning. That was a different situation there. So I think that was a situation where it's like, oh, and everybody's talking to, I think it was Chase Elliott at the time that had an engine failure in the race. And, it was a big thing. But look, everybody's going to ask the question. It's like, okay, cool. Like, whether it's 12 people or 13 people talking to the person, it's not going to make a big difference. But hey, I'm going to go over here and try to get this because something is always happening. I think I told Ben this too. If I didn't, I should have, because it's that's always what's happening. Is there's always something happening, and because of that, you're never going to see everything. You're always going to miss something. But if you go in there with purpose and you figure out what you're going to do, I'm saying this like I know, but all I could really comment on is my own experience, and that's kind of the situation there at the same time. So yeah, Bubba Wallace with a third last place finish. Unfortunate situation for the 23 team. It was good to still be able to talk about that good run he had at Kansas earlier this year, but that team just needs a turnaround. Hopefully this off weekend will afford them that. And maybe in Nashville they can figure something out and maybe have a run closer to Kansas with less drama on pit road. Just like he said in his interview with Front Stretch, they just got to put together a calm weekend and not have problems like this. These problems pale in comparison to what we saw in the Truck Series race, and we'll certainly get into that pretty soon here too. But that's the other situation. Looking at other results here from the Cup Series race, Ross Chastain, the 7th spot, good finish for him. Brad Keselowski in the top 10, we talked about that. Justin Haley, just outside of the top 10. One thing that's kind of overlooked is Haley, one of his first starts before he won the Daytona race was at Sears Point. He started at Talladega for Spire Motorsports, and then another race he did before he did Daytona is he actually ran at Sears Point, and he drove the 77 car. I don't remember him. I think he finished like 25th or something like that. But yeah, he was actually out at the track and running with that team another stop before he had that upset win with the lightning strikes there at Daytona. And apparently that experience helped because he was able to get a good finish out of this one. The 12th spot there. Chase Briscoe was kind of muscled out of the way by somebody on the final lap. That's the other video I want to post too, because I did mention that Ricky Stenhouse had bounced off one of the tire barriers. It wasn't a major impact, but it was a noticeable one that pushed in the right front fender on the final lap there. Made no difference. At that point, it was just get to the stripe and you're done. But I'm going to have that video posted on the YouTube channel here pretty soon. And we'll just kind of put it, again, I'm probably just going to smash it all together with Last Pro stuff. And we'll get that up for you guys. As I mentioned the other day, if you guys like content, we got it. I got some other stuff from William as well that I got to post up later this week. So even though we just got the truck race this week, I think it'll be a perfect time to get some more stuff up here pretty soon too. So that'll be pretty cool. We talked about Allmendinger and Joey Hand. They were 19th and 20th. Cole Custer tweeted earlier today that he had a really good run going. He did qualify 6th. He looked solid for part of it. But once again, just like at the 600, just like at Gateway, finds himself in just the wrong place at the wrong time. And he's now in that situation that I guess Suarez was not too long ago. Of course, Custer's won his first race. He did it back in Kentucky. But still, he's trying to get his feet under him and join his teammate, Chase Briscoe, and trying to actually get more of those Stewart-Haas guys back into contention. I've been very pleased with the progress he's made this spring. I think you can only get your heart broken if you're in the mix, but hopefully you have a situation where the heartbreak won't be necessary at all. Again, I talked about the Joe Gibbs situation, just abysmal for those guys. That has to be, I don't know for sure, but that's probably the worst average finish of all 4 Gibbs cars there. 26th for Truex, 27th for Christopher Bell, 30th for Kyle Busch, 31st for Denny Hamlin. Hamlin, the last one of the lead lap, almost caught by the leaders at the end of the race there. Again, 31 cars on the lead lap. Just a very bizarre race. And also, we saw the issue of the toe link was a problem again. Relatively minor contact between Tyler Reddick and Josh Bilicki set Reddick behind the wall for about 10 laps. And they had to work on that left rear. Very little cosmetic damage on the fender of the car, but that took them out of the race completely. They had to back the car in and they had a brake rotor taken off of there, which was interesting. I don't know if that was part of the issue. I wasn't able to talk with the team there as they were getting that together. But a lot of repairs. Corey LaJoie was on pit road forever. I know he dropped back. He actually last pro said he almost hit the wall in turn four. That part where it kind of tapers off there. I know that when they got rid of those rumble strips there, you drivers can kind of hit that curb a lot more aggressively and use that runoff. They had a situation where a lot of drivers are playing, chicken with that fence that comes up there, and Corey was among those. But fortunately, he avoided anything serious there, but unfortunately ends up in the 34th spot after his last place run at Gateway last week. So that was an unfortunate deal there for the Spire Motorsports team. And his teammate Josh Balicki not much better in 29th, although still ahead of two of the Gibbs guys there at the same time. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how well it played on TV. I'm seeing some comments here already that seem to indicate that it maybe wasn't the best broadcast out there. I'll be interested to see how it plays. I'm sure it'll be interesting, but yeah, it's a crazy way that it played out there too. So yeah, a great race for Daniel Suarez. I think it was, again, it reminded so much of it reminded me of 2012, except for the clouds at the beginning, and there was a little bit of drizzle before the race started. And there were rain tires staged there. Of course, the cars had the windshield wipers on them, but there were the rain tires were there, and a lot of the teams didn't get move them back to the garage area until really the last pit stops were done. About what was it, 25-30 to go when the Kyle Larson situation happened. So yeah, that was kind of weird how that played out there too. I saw the super chats here too. Thank you so much for those. My goodness, let me jump into those there and get those read off here as well. Section 8 U.S. Marine Corps 53. Thank you for the super chat here. Absolutely. The booth this weekend was perfection. Instead of 3 mains plus Tech, Larry Mack had more air again. Mike and Tony were great. Not too much, not too little. I'll be interested to hear that. I was very pleased with Tony Stewart back at COTA. I thought he did a good job. I thought he does. It's interesting. He's right. He's kind of like Ernie Irvan, or even Richard Petty, in the sense of being a driver that has tremendous accomplishments, and yet it sounds so mild-mannered in the booth. But Stewart is fun, and he kind of messes around a little bit, and I thought when the race turned out as crazy as it was at COTA, he was fun to listen to during that. And I'll be interested to hear his. I haven't watched the broadcast yet, but I'm excited to hear it. I think that'll be interesting to check out. Yeah, I think he and Mike Joy would play off pretty well too. So yes, thank you for the super chat, and I'm hopeful that it'll be interesting to hear at the same time. Michael Jensen, thank you for your super chat as well. Congratulations to Suarez, well deserved. Question if you know, Joey had run great all day, top 15 to 20. When he's in the car, is it an SHR car like Priest or full Rick Ware racing? As far as I understand, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other with the Stewart Haas versus the Rick Ware equipment. By them being partners with Stewart Haas, I would assume that this is still Stewart Haas equipment in some shape or form. Is on necessarily equal terms with like a Chase Briscoe car or a Cody, or a Eric Almirola car or Kevin Harvick car? That I'm not sure. That's a very good question. I think it's hard to delineate that now because the next gen car is still relatively new and we've seen some flexibility. And even if it was one that was made in the Rick Ware shop versus Stewart Haas, how much of a difference would there be? I mean, it's hard to tell with it being spec. Obviously, there's going to be some differences because we're still seeing, drivers at the front of the field that, generally are going to be up there. And you see other drivers at the back of the field that generally are back there. So it's hard to tell. But I think, much like Justin Marks said in his interview after the race, he really felt that with the next gen car coming in, it was going to be much more about the people. It wasn't going to be about the equipment necessarily. It was going to be about who you put in the car and what they could get out of it. And I think with Joey Hand, I think that whether you put him in a Rick Ware car or a Stewart Haas car, if there is that much of a difference, and even if it's a small difference, that could be a big difference on the track. He was able to just wheel the hell out of it. And you think back to road racers of the past where they jump into teams that generally, not already they have kind of slow equipment. I'm thinking of like Jasper Motorsports when Boris Said drove for them. And then they have a road course car that's used even less. Like back then, it's only used 2 times of the year. It's probably some chassis from like ancient times, probably early '90s or something at that point, or late '80s. And then they dust that off and bring it out, and they put a road course driver in there, and then they have a great run out there. I think with that model in place, if you got everybody running the same equipment nowadays, I think the difference, if it's there, it's a lot narrower. And again, I think it is much more a reflection of the drivers. It's a very good question. My frank answer is I don't know because it's tricky to figure out, whose car is whose. But I sense there's so much cooperation between the two teams. But there must be some difference because we've still seen the Rick Ware folks like have some struggles here or there. Excuse me. Need a little code red to wash that down. But yeah, that was kind of the it's a good question though. That would be interesting. Um, yeah. Is it an SHR car like Priest? I mean, because again, yeah, Priest. I don't know how much of a better car he has versus like Cody Ware. I guess that's the real question. Is like how much better would his cars be than Cody Ware's? That I'm not sure. My assumption is like there must be something where Stewart Haas provides some kind of additional support. That would probably be it. Maybe not. Maybe the car is not different, but what resources they have to get it ready is different. Like who's on the crew, or what notes they have, or what they're able to do. I think that's probably the difference. So that would be another thing to look at too. It's a good question. It's something I should follow up with the Rick Ware folks. I know they're usually not too crazy about what this site does, but they're not last place all the time. They're not even the leaders of it right now. So I think that's a clear sign of some progress. I don't think Cody's finished last once this year. So that's any progress you can get is progress, and one way or the other. I think that's we're kind of we could be a measuring stick as much as anybody else. So there's that. Let's see. Do. I saw a couple. I think I saw a couple more here. Let me get that. Ah, yes. Here we go. Was that on that? Okay, no, I got those. Okay, good. I want to make sure I just didn't miss anybody. All right, so yeah, so the cup race there was absolutely tremendous. And again, it may not have been the wildest race out there. It didn't have like anything, any crazy accidents or anything like that. But a good, nice, clean race generally, and good competition out there. I'd still rather we don't have the stage cautions. I'd love to have like a more natural approach to strategy because I think that makes it a lot more interesting. Luckily we had a taste of that with the caution coming out when it did with the Kyle Larson situation. But that's just it's still just so radically different from the way it used to be on that. But I would not at all call that a bad race. I think it was engaging, and yeah, it was nerve wracking to see if it was going to actually finish under green or if some ridiculous thing was going to happen that was going to absolutely turn this race on its head again. But yeah, I mean, so many great stories in this one, and it was fun to certainly follow on that. So let's talk about the Truck Series race again here. And first and foremost, again, another one person I have to absolutely thank is Brad Perez over there. That was tremendous. When he had the announcement last week, I believe it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, that he was going to be able to not only run the truck race at Sears Point, but be able to run it with Nate Blasdell and the folks there at I Set My Friends on Fire and the band, um, and that they were using basically the same paint scheme that a fan put online there. That was tremendous. I think that was awesome. And once I heard about that, I was just getting off work when I heard about it, and so I messaged him and was like, "Hey, you're looking for sponsorship? You want anybody on board?" And I had those extra stickers from the Norm Benning thing last year. They just been sitting in a drawer here at Last Car headquarters. So I just said, "Hey, 6 inches by 6 inches. What can what'll that be?" And we got something worked out on that. and I'm glad we can make it happen. And I'm even happier that he was able to qualify for the race. There was a bit of a story behind that, unrelated to Brad, that we'll get into here as well. But Absolutely exciting. It was great to see the logo on there. It was great that he didn't finish in last because, of course, that was in the back of my mind. It was great that Harris Lou was really excited because he was wearing his knock around shades there and he had the logo and everything on that on the uniform. It was just so exciting. His girlfriend was there. There was he was very popular the entire weekend. There were so many people stopping by. Ben and I met up with him on Friday, and he put the sticker on the truck. That's when you saw the video there online, and it was really cool. And it meant a lot to me because I've been coming to Sears Point since 1992. This year was the 30th anniversary of the first time I'd come out here. It's only the second time I've really done a paid sponsorship on one of these teams. It's something I've always really wanted to do. I don't want to just give people certificates and that's it. I'd like to be able to help some of these teams in some way if that's at all possible. We were able to do it with Norm Benning last year. Unfortunately, it didn't work out when they had some issues in qualifying. But this time around, in another white truck here, this time for Josh Realm's team, who we've talked about so much. It was a good feeling, and I told him, I think, look, it meant a lot to me to see that logo going around the track I've been to for 30 years, and that was really cool. So kudos to him, and a great run out there. I know a 22nd place finish to most drivers is not a good run, and certainly to Kyle Busch it wouldn't feel that way. Kyle had no problems with that in this particular race, and that's a subject of a whole other discussion. The 43 team, though, they have just gone through absolute hell pretty much ever since Brad was last in the truck at COTA. They've had multiple DNQs. They were flagged off the track with Jesse Iwuji. They've just had problem after problem, and they've been in each one of my articles. And when it was announced that Brad was going to be in the truck, I was like, "Look, hey, let's make this happen. Let's do this too." Because I told him, it's like, "Look, I can't put too much money into it. It would be exciting to do it, but I know my Patreon members would be just as fun with it there at the same time." And say, look, if you need to take 2 tires at the end, I want to make sure you can do it. So that was kind of the plan. Did stove the nose in. He had an incident with Matt Crafton coming up the hill. There is a blind spot there where the turn 3 rises up before you kind of go downhill into 4. And with the sun coming down, I mean, this is, 4:30 when this race started was about when the ARCA race usually ended. So it was a very different set of circumstances we usually see on NASCAR weekend. So it had its own set of challenges, but I think it was a fine run there, and almost beat his career best. I mean, went from 20th to 22nd in that situation there. I don't know how much coverage he got in the broadcast. I know Michael Waltrip did the interview with him at COTA, and Michael Waltrip did come by the garage area shortly after we put the sticker on the truck actually, and talked with him there. So that was really cool. That was really exciting to see. I mentioned the Tom Bodine interview. We did that at the same time, and that was really cool. That was good. But glad to help over there. It's not something I could do all the time, but much like covering these races themselves. But here and there, I'd like it to be kind of something to look at. So that'll be pretty fun to do. I'm seeing some comments about this already, and we're absolutely going to get into it. The other big story in the Truck Series race, or at least in terms of last place coverage there, was the story of G2G Racing. And we'll definitely we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Thank you for the thank you for the other super chat here, Michael Jensen. I see your comment on that. I think we're about to go the same direction here. But let me read yours here. I think about the truck race. Supposedly the 47 truck was at the track, but the driver no-showed. Any info on that? And the team truck, the 46 with Parsons instead of Philippi, who practiced. Yes, I will talk about all of that here. And there is so much more to that story. It is a literal rabbit hole. This was my entire Saturday, basically, was chasing down this story. And I still am getting information. Actually, I talked before the show tonight, just this afternoon. I already talked with Travis McCullough, And I'm not the first person to talk to him. He's been talking with other people looking to make something happen further down the line there. And so I have his interview. I talked with a few other people, including Stephen Parsons. I'm working on another article to follow up with the Truck Series article, and we'll get into that here in just a second. Alrighty. Um, yes. So here's the here. So here's the situation. So Ben and I are going through the garage area in the Truck Series race, and as I usually do, I like to go to the back of it and just see, okay, what's the smallest team? Because of course the smallest team is always the last one in line. Um, there was the 47 truck and the 46 truck out there. 47 truck was the white truck there that Travis McCullough was going to run, and what was going to be his first Truck Series start. And it was going to be his series debut. He'd never started in the top three series before, but he talked with Brett Bodine. He had gained approval to run the race, so there was no issue with that. From what I'm hearing, and he was all set to go. He had sponsors on board. The company was actually his company that was on the 47. They do a lot of great things in their business, and they were all on board for this. He had some other people out there; they were ready to race. So this was not a situation where the driver like bailed out on the team. So that from what I'm hearing on this, I cannot say that that's what happened. So this was a situation where there were other circumstances at play. Mason Philippi was there. He was getting the 46 ready, and the 47 around the same time was already on jack stands with wheels off. There were all kind of parts on the rear deck. It was just a complete mess, and this was getting pretty close to when practice was going to start. Now it turned out I did talk with the team manager over at G2G, and he indicated that there was a problem with a flat tire on the hauler or mechanical problems on it. They were supposed to come to the track well in advance to check in, excuse me, with everybody else, and that was supposed to be the situation. What ended up happening is they were delayed so much that they didn't get there until maybe an hour and 10 minutes before practice. So those trucks had to be absolutely ready getting off the truck, and they just had to get the best runs that they could. Unfortunately, it seemed like there were just other things that had to be done, clear as day from all the parts that were on the 47, and it was all hands on deck, and they were trying to do what they could do to get those entries out there. But again, this is where the story gets a little bit fuzzy here from one side to the other. Well, actually, this isn't that point. As to the mechanical ability of those trucks, that's the part I'm still kind of figuring out. As to the approval of the drivers, that part is clear. It was a situation where drug test results weren't being provided in time. It wasn't the fact that they failed the drug test. That was not the situation. And when I was getting this information, I wanted to make very clear that that was not what was happening. What did happen is that they had both, they, meaning not just Travis McCullough, but also Colin Garrett over at the number 30 at On Point Motorsports. Both of them had submitted to drug tests, the same thing that they got to do to, start one of these races and get approval. And they were awaiting those results, and ordinarily they get them well in advance of practice. NASCAR would say, "Okay, you're cleared to run," and you go out there, and then you just participate like anybody else. Now there's a lot of problems here. Whether it was the fact that we have a difference in time zones, the fact that apparently drug-free sports, from what I'm hearing, is based out in Missouri. And of course, the teams are in Charlotte, and they're racing in California. And we're talking a Friday. It's like, when are these test results going to be processed? When is the information going to come out? And at what point does the shop just close and they're not going to even provide those results? That's been a big situation there. The 47 was still supposed to run, and same thing with the 46. Stephen Parsons was apparently brought over. Parsons was at the track not to compete. He was actually going to be a spotter for all three series. On the truck series side, he was actually going to be one of Tom Bodine's spotters for the 62. When the issue with McCullough's drug test results not coming back came up, Parsons was brought in to drive. He was not the only driver that was brought on to drive. Keith McGee was also there. This was the same guy that we saw at Las Vegas last year. You'll recall he was the one that I believe he went to the poker tables and got enough backing there to run the 49 truck last year, which was with back then it was Ray Cicerelli's team. And now, of course, that team's since become G2G Racing, and they acquired those assets. So tangle that up even more. So the 47 team, if this sounds confusing and complicated, it's because it is. And I'm still figuring it out too. So I'm dancing around trying to get the right details. So don't worry if you're confused. And I'm sure you'll have questions in the chat. Go ahead and drop them in there, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. And there's some of it I'm still figuring out. So McCullough's drug test results didn't come in. He couldn't practice the truck. The problem was with that is there was only one practice, and they, if you can't practice the truck, NASCAR rules stipulate that you can't actually qualify or race the truck because they can't have your first session be qualifying or racing. So basically, at that point, McCullough was not going to start the truck. As to the withdrawal of the entry and why Keith McGee or Stephen Parsons wasn't in it, that seemed to be much more of an issue of the truck just itself not being ready. That it was sitting on jack stands, there were parts everywhere. Parsons himself was part of trying to get the truck ready, but according to the team manager, the number 47 was already withdrawn on Friday, and they were just out of the field. So the 47 wasn't going to start, and Travis McCullough wasn't going to start, and it's just a bad situation for both of them. They brought this truck out that wasn't going to run, and McCullough was already at his helmet bag was all there and stuff and was set to go, and he wasn't going to be able to race. So that's why that truck and that driver weren't able to compete in it. Now, of course, that wasn't the only thing that happened. Now, so McCullough's situation was not unique. He was not the only driver that wasn't getting his drug test results back. At the same time, directly across from theirs was the On Point hauler, where they had the number 30 team. I think Nate Blasdale was actually involved in the sponsorship effort for that one as well. Colin Garrett was supposed to run that. Now, Colin Garrett is not new to NASCAR. He's not even really new to the NASCAR Truck Series. He'd run a couple truck races before, and he run a lot more Xfinity races with the Sam Hunt effort. So he wasn't under the same restriction that McCullough was, where if he couldn't practice, he couldn't qualify. So basically, he had a little bit wider of a window to get the drug test results back. But he was in the same situation. He couldn't get the drug test results. He couldn't practice the truck. And instead of having a backup driver, his truck just didn't run. Same thing with McCullough's 47. But the 47, it was much more of a mechanical issue. The truck just, the things just weren't set up right. McCullough was very clear about that, and he clarified that in our discussion this afternoon. That was the situation over there. The 30 truck, however, was ready to go. So it was unfortunate for them. They just couldn't get it out there. Josh Bilicki didn't come into the picture until Saturday, until the actual qualifying session. That was the situation with Garrett. Garrett had held out hope that he could run this. This was his only really planned NASCAR attempt right now. He said he's been focusing much more on sports cars. But by Saturday morning, he still couldn't get his drug test results back. And suddenly, he's not running. But luckily, the 30 truck is actually able to be in the race. Bilicki comes in because, of course, he's already out here for the Cup Series for Spire Motorsports. He's about the same height as Garrett, so he was able to fit in the truck. And he went out there and he qualified the truck. That wasn't the end of his weekend, unfortunately. We'll get into that there at the same time. So, the question then is, there's another truck over the G2G hauler in the meantime, the number 46. Mason Philippi was driving it. Mason Philippi brought his sponsorship, openfender.com, with the number 46, the same backer that he brought to, I believe it was the DGM racing team at Portland last week in the Xfinity Series. And he ran the Portland race in the rain, and I think he was like 25th in that race. Not a great finish, but not a terrible finish, especially if it's your Xfinity debut on a completely different track in really difficult conditions. But he's an experienced road course driver, and he's from the Bay Area, much like Travis McCullough. So you have this setup here, and he gets a ride there too. And he was waiting right with McCullough, waiting for that hauler to show up with his truck. Luckily, they were able to get the 46 to fire, and he got out there, and he did turn laps. He turned about the same laps as everybody else, but unfortunately, he was easily the slowest truck out there. I believe he's about 6 seconds off the pole. So both the G2G trucks were having serious problems in one fashion or another. Now, according to the team manager, and specifically him, and I'm saying this because I haven't talked to Mason Philippi yet. He was there. I should have interviewed him at the time, but I didn't think anything was wrong. I figured I'd talk to him after the race, and that was going to be my plan. I was going to kind of follow up with him after the race, and we'll see what's happening. Well, he didn't end up getting to start the race. Instead of Mason Philippi, it was Stephen Parsons. Parsons, who had helped with the 47, was instead put in the 46. Now, of course, this raises real questions. Mason Philippi is an experienced sports car driver. He had more than proven himself in that Portland race. He wasn't dart without feathers out there. He was doing a good job out there, had a good run, brought the car back in one piece. And now he's going to be at this track here, running the truck and just getting the best run that they can. So what was the situation? According to the team manager, and this was something that Travis raised an eyebrow about, is he wasn't making the transition between the Xfinity cars and the trucks. That there are ways that you drive the truck that's very different from driving the Xfinity car. And this may have been a factor. I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt on this because I'm not the most mechanically inclined person out there. But this is what I was told, is that there was a situation where he wasn't able to handle the truck and they needed to get somebody in there that could handle it more. Now, Stephen Parsons has run in the truck series. In fact, he ran at Phoenix one of the first times we've been out there. So admittedly, he does have more truck series experience. That does seem conducive to that. He, of course, wasn't brought in there to originally run it, and he did have his Motorsport Games uniform from BJ McLeod's team with a Truck Series patch kind of taped over the Xfinity Series one. But that was the situation, and apparently Philippi was swapped out. I don't exactly know why. I've heard some reasons that people think why, but at this moment, I can't say one way or the other what the situation was. All I can say is I'm looking into it. I'm hoping to get some more information on it. And as soon as I have that information, I'm looking to do another article there and kind of tie all this together. Travis's interview was very helpful to that direction, as was Tim Silva at G2G Racing, who is both the team manager and the crew chief. Both of them were very open with me. They gave great interviews. Stephen Parsons told me everything he knew on that. And Colin Garrett, I talked with him. And they're not the only ones I'm talking to here. So this is going to be kind of a bit bigger article here. I don't think it's going to be a big thing necessarily. I don't think this is like a huge controversy. I feel terrible for those involved. I feel terrible for Mason Philippi and Travis McCullough, first of all, because they had their sponsors and they came all the way out here. And we all know how expensive gas prices are. And coming out here has always been a challenge well before that was ever an issue. You got people that spend $3,000 just to get from here to Tennessee, or vice versa. But I feel bad for them. I feel bad for G2G, honestly. Just kind of understanding more of their organization. And Tim Silva, again, was very open in talking about, what challenges they faced and how they were trying to navigate this weekend. And so all that happened. So, after all this, Stephen Parsons is in the 46. He has to go to the back of the field, not really for the driver change, but because of unapproved adjustments. Because when the trucks were in Parc Ferme there in the garage, you saw the picture of it. I posted it on Twitter. All the other trucks are being left alone except the 46. It has a hood up, and the crew's still working on it. And there was some kind of problem with that. Whether it's the same problem that was the 47, again, I don't know. Hopefully we'll get some more information on that going forward. But something was wrong, clearly. And this became much more clear when the race started. Parsons had to come down pit road for an unscheduled stop. There was an issue with the, I believe it was the throttle linkage. So they had to get that looked at. It was at the back of the field. Again, they already pretty much were. And then 9 laps into the race, truck started having smoke in the cockpit. Parsons indicated on the radio that it smelled like gear oil. It turns out that it was just oil. An oil cooler was the listed reason of the eventual last place finish that resulted. The 46 pulled right past me when I was in turn 11. So that's where those pictures came from. I followed the truck into the garage area. I didn't see really a trail of oil there at that point. It must have happened something earlier at that point. But I went back over there. They lifted the hood. There was oil splattered all over the inside of the hood, all over the engine. There was spraying engine cleaner everywhere. Parsons was there. He was trying to help them as best they could, but their day was done. And NASCAR declared them out about 10 laps after that. And that was the end of that. So they had a truck that was pretty much just in pieces, the 47 was, and never turned a lap at all. I don't think the engine even fired the entire weekend. They couldn't even get it to that point. So whatever the problem was there, it was something seriously wrong. And I hope to get some more information on that. That's another thing I need to understand better. Travis provided a lot of good information on that. I'm looking to kind of get some other information there. And then the 46, there's some kind of catastrophic problem with the engine. And they're out of the race, and that's it. And they're loaded up, and even before the race is over with there, and their day is done. So just a frustrating weekend for that team, in general. And then you got the drug test thing on top of it. And then, of course, the other team that was affected by the drug test situation, the On Point Motorsports effort. Josh Blicky's out there. He's potentially going to have a top 15, maybe even a top 10. Looked like he was having a solid run out there. I mean, the Cup guys, unfortunately, were at the top of the field doing what they always do. But Bilicki ends up in that very brutal accident in turn 1. Brad Perez was actually not too far behind that, about 4 trucks behind it, with the sun glare coming over that part of the course. You had a situation where Stuart Friesen got into Bilicki. Bilicki bounces off the outside wall, or the inside wall, then the outside. And that's just it doesn't seem like a narrow choke point until something like that happens. And thankfully, it doesn't happen often. The barriers, I know, have been kind of a point of controversy a little bit, but that was really the situation there too, and it just created a heck of a mess there. And unfortunately, after all that happened on the 30 team, with Garrett not being able to run it and Bilicki helping, they ended up with just a destroyed truck there too, and that's just a complete mess for those guys. So, heartbreaker for a lot of these small teams. You hate to see it. I think that, the drug test thing is one part of it. Mechanical issues were definitely another part of it. And there's even more information from both. But I look forward to kind of unpacking that a bit more and getting some more context to you guys. So, I think, hopefully there can be a learning experience from this. So hopefully it's not as big of a problem for, whether it's an issue with the team or an issue with drug-free sports and getting the results back or whatever is going on here. Just figure out what the heck is happening. But that's the information I have basically on my end there about what happened with the 46 and the 47. But I am still looking to talk to Mason Philippi and other parties involved in this. And I'm looking to kind of just run this story to ground and really kind of get a better understanding of it there. So I hope you guys look forward to that. We'll have that for the website there. I think that'll be coming up here. Hopefully not too much longer. I know I got a whole stack of things here. The Field Fillers episode, of course, Stanton Barrett is still in the works. Other videos and stuff like that. This is going to be more of an article, really, on the G2G deal. I think it'll work better in that function. But we'll have some more information for that. But, yeah, just a bizarre situation. I'd be open to talking to Tim Veens over at the team. I haven't attempted to reach out to him yet, but I'd be certainly open to talking to him on this. I definitely want to make sure I'm characterizing things accurately here, because I know when a lot of this much money is involved, not just in transporting the trucks to the field, but also getting the sponsorship out there and all the effort that's put into it. Not to mention the intangibles of just trying to actually compete in one of NASCAR's national series. It was a painful experience for a lot of people involved there. But I think it's that much more important to really get the story cleared up. So I hope that it's going to be a situation there. Was it an engine failure? I see your comment on that there, James. A power steering pump pulley rubbed through an oil line. Yeah, it sounded like something like that. From Parsons said something about, like something may have rubbed against the line and caused a leak there. The official results listed an oil cooler. Again, the process by which NASCAR, lists a certain reason out, would be something, kind of interesting to figure out more, but, that was just what they listed there. But whatever it was, it sprayed oil all over the place. The engine was still running. It just didn't have any oil in it at that point, or at least a lot less. So that was a different situation there too. Kyle Foster, I saw you pop up here in the chat there. Thanks for tuning in, man. Yeah, I like being your neighbor there in the media center too. Kyle and I were sitting in the first corner of the media center there, along with Andrew there, and we were having a good time there covering the action there this weekend. And then Ben Schneider, of course, as I mentioned, was there at the media center there as well. So it was, yeah, there was a lot of good representation among the viewers here, or the regulars at the Sonoma Raceway this year too. But yeah, it was a very difficult situation with the 46 and the 47. But as far as I know, that's the full understanding of it. There are some details from that I'm looking to get clarification on, but we'll certainly find out. Christian Eckes, Matt Crafton, Jay Buford, and Haley Deegan rounded out the bottom five of that race after Parsons' early exit. Buford, I actually got a chance to talk to him. I didn't really use the interview in the articles. I was looking to, ask if he knew much more about the situation where the Childress drivers were taking over for him. He said he certainly hoped to actually be able to run some more races for Big Machine this year. But again, he didn't really have any new information on that. So last I heard, it was going to be just up for grabs as to who was going to run the car in the playoffs. But again, not getting any kind of clear information beyond that. So hopefully we'll find out in the near future, and that'll be interesting to find out there too. At the front of the field, we didn't really talk about the win at all, but it's Kyle Busch winning it. He led 45 laps because of course he did, and won a race. He came in the media center. He answered 3 questions and he left. So that was about it for the front of the field there, which is too bad. I get at the same point here that the Cup guys wanted to run this race because it looked like a lot of fun, and there's a lot of the Truck Series competition. But still, seeing how well Ty Majeski was doing, he was very impressive out there in that Thor Sport entry. Seemed like this may have actually been a potential race where he could mix it up with them. But Chastain and Kyle Busch were just in another zip code for most of this, especially Kyle. Once Kyle dispensed of the 41, it seemed like it was just over at that point. And when NASCAR takes on that attribute, that's... I get it happens, and I'm sure Richard Petty did that more than enough times, but at least he did it in Cup races. So, I don't know. It was it was way too many Cup guys in the field. And I get not all of them were equally successful. Austin Dillon was well back in the pack. Alex Bowman ended up getting a piece of the wreck with Bilecki. So they were dropped out of it. But there were so many in there that, one of them was going to pull it off, more than likely. And ultimately, that was the situation there. So, Kyle Busch, your winner in the truck race. All those 4 starts of trying and not quite pulling off the win, and then he pulls it off here. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, that was great. So, if you think that fans need to see Kyle Busch out there to make a truck race interesting, I'll be very interested from their reaction to Kyle Busch spinning out in the Cup race. Because, I'm not sure. Let's just say that. It'll be it's an interesting video. I'm playing it up too much, but it made me laugh, though, when I was seeing it afterwards. So we'll get that posted here pretty soon and get some more content for you guys on the YouTube side of things, too. Not just the articles. But it was good to see the trucks out there. It's unfortunate that it had to be bookended by just a completely disastrous weekend for G2G and the complete domination by Kyle Busch there. I think that there was some good racing in the middle of the pack. Chris Wright ran in the back of somebody at one point and stuffed the nose in. You saw a lot of comers and goers trying to work their way through the pack there at the same time. And I thought overall it was pretty enjoyable if you just forgot who was leading. But how many times have we said that from one race to the next? So that was kind of the other situation there too. But thank you for the super chat there, Michael, as well, about the G2G guys. That was definitely another situation there between those 2 injuries. Charles Peterson, yeah. The next Rise of the Field filler is still in the works there. I think we're getting closer to getting Stanton Barrett's thing done. I think that'll be great. And we'll get that kind of figured out here. And we'll certainly do that. So, yeah, ran into a lot of people that were NASCAR readers at the track this weekend. I ran into Zishan, who's a big Jennifer Jo Cobb fan. He was there with his mother this weekend. His mother seeing her first race. Picked a great one to see, seeing Daniel Suarez pull off his first victory. Ran into some other crew members, folks from the GMS effort there that were fans of the website there as well. Got to talk to them about some field filler stuff. And the articles there at the same time. Everybody was just very friendly at the track there. I mean, I think it was a great atmosphere. I always recommend Sears Point to anybody. I know it's a very different experience from going to an oval, but that's part of the charm. It can be a little bit tricky to kind of navigate your way around it. But I think Jill Gregory has done some tremendous work really revitalizing this track in the very brief time that she's been working as the vice president here at the track. So I'm going to be very excited to see what's coming up next. Last row, got some pictures inside the Turn 11 building at the end of the race there. Kind of checked that out. I need to tweet those as well because I don't think I posted those yet. But he's got a way of getting of working a room a bit better than I'm able to. So he was kind of checking that out after the race. But it seemed like a great view. It's kind of elevated over the track. I don't know if they used it in the pre-race show. I kind of anticipated they probably would. But it gives you, I think if you had a Tony Stewart accident like in 2011, the car would probably be looking like it's almost sitting in your lap from that vantage point there. But not to say it's unsafe, quite the opposite. I think it's got all the catch fences there. But an incredible view. People were just lined up at the fence there before the start of the race. I think it provided a really unique view of the racing there from the weekend. One thing that was a little bit hair-raising here, as you noticed, I'm sure from my social media there, we barely got to the race in time on Sunday. The traffic at Sears Point is notoriously bad because it's just a one-lane road there and back on Highway 37 when you're going from Vallejo to the track. It's a stretch of about 10 miles, which isn't that long, but it's way slower on race day. What we had a situation there is that we had several more traffic jams on the freeway on the way over from NASCAR headquarters to the track. What started off as looking like a 2-hour drive became a 3 to 3.5 hour drive, and that pushed us very close to almost missing the start. Ben was really cool. He called me on the way over, and he must have read my mind because I was thinking, man, I'm going to have to call him to do the last place coverage there for the first few laps till I could take over. And I'm sure he would have done a great job at that, but fortunately it wasn't necessary because I hate missing a start of a race. But we got there enough time. Driver intros were happening right when I dropped my computer off in the media center, and I'm glad I was able to kind of get that going. So that was really exciting too. I was glad to see Joe Ruttman there for part of the intro. I would have loved to talk to him. I saw Boris Said, I saw Ron Hornaday, but I didn't see Ruttman. I would have loved to talk to him there during that. Although I'm not sure how much he would have wanted to talk about the times driving the start and park entry for Phoenix Racing. But I think it could have been interesting. Who knows? Some drivers are more eager to talk about those things than others. And that's just, that's understandable given the careers these drivers have there. But yeah, Charles Peterson, you're right to bring that up. That was a cool feature. I liked that they recognized the history of the Truck Series race at Sears Point. So that was certainly really good. So, we got, I think that's mostly kind of what I think does most of it for the Cup and the Truck Series races. I'm sure there's other stuff I'm not thinking of from the weekend here, but I'll definitely have that come to mind here. Let's see. Oh, do we have our Brazilian fan in here as well? I think I saw that on the list here. There you are, Alexandra. Thank you for checking this out. Mr. Benatti, thank you so much for checking out the stream today. I'm glad this worked for your time zone there as well. But yeah, a wild weekend there from all the races here at the same time. I do have still an article I'm working on with the Cup Series Invaders in the lower series. I kind of reached a stopping point where I wasn't quite sure how to finish it, but I think this race weekend kind of really helped it because it was just obnoxious. And I don't think the crowd was particularly into Kyle Busch winning that race either. But, it is what it is there, too. We'll talk about the ARCA West race a little bit. I kind of left that more to Ben. I was doing something else during that race. But I'm going to step aside here for just a moment. In the meantime, what I'll do is we'll do our trivia section here next. And we'll do that for the latter part of the show. And, of course, we'll use our Tiger Electronics deal here for the end of this. And so you guys can pick out your categories while I'm away here for just a moment. Categories again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories there. So again, it is NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and pick out your favorite category here. I'm going to step away for just a second here. And when I come back, we'll do trivia. We got show and tell, and we'll wrap up the show for this week. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat, and I will cover those as well in just a moment. So stay tuned, folks. There we go. Okay. All right, folks, we are back. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in here today. I know it's a little different on a Monday here, but we'll wrap up the show here today. I like the idea. I see a couple comments here about doing the NASCAR as a category. I think we will do that because I don't know. I'm with you guys. I can't remember the last time I've done that. So I think that'll be a good one to kind of lead into. Before we do that, we'll do our show and tell segment here. One thing that I posted on Twitter earlier this week, or I guess over this weekend, I was posted a picture of this diecast here, the number 41 Kellogg's Cornflakes Chevrolet, the version that Greg Sachs drove in 1992. One picture that often comes up with this car, there we go, try to get in the right focus here, is that it flipped at Watkins Glen in 1992, probably one of the more infamous wrecks that wasn't actually filmed live, but there's some very harrowing pictures of it. Sachs always seemed to have just rough luck there with the road courses in particular. He had a pretty bad wreck at Watkins Glen in 1990 as well. But in 1992, he drove this car at the first Cup race I ever attended, and this car finished in the last place position there after an engine failure. Actually, when you watch the opening of this, which we'll play again at the end of the show tonight, that you actually see that car crest the hill going into the carousel. That is this particular team and that particular last place finish, which is why it's a little Easter egg I put in the opening of that one there. So to mark this occasion with the 30th anniversary of the race, I did bring this car to the track, and on Friday, I believe it was just after the Truck Series practice had ended, I took a couple pictures at the actual Turn 11 entrance that this car likely took in 1992 to drop out of the race. And of course, back then, it would have been clearly visible from the grandstands in the infield of the track there. So kind of something to feature on this here. I actually didn't have this just recently. I just picked this up on eBay when the idea kind of came to me a couple weeks before the race. So I was able to pick it up, and it came out in great condition. So I thought it was kind of neat. The 43rd scale doesn't seem to get as much love these days, but it's always kind of a neat scale. They have kind of a balance of detail without having to take up quite as much room as a 24th scale does. So I thought that was kind of neat. But yeah, the pictures I posted the tweet on Sunday, but I took the pictures on Friday there, which is a good thing I did because yeah, I didn't really have a whole lot of time on Sunday, but things worked out at that point there. So I definitely wanted to show that for this week's show here. So we'll go ahead and get into our trivia section here, and we'll kind of wrap up the show for this week. If you guys do have any other questions from the weekend or anything else I didn't cover, feel free to ask. I'll try to think of anything else from the weekend that stood out at the same time there. It was just, yeah, great weekend, I think, on that one too. So, yeah. Let's take a photo of the diecast upside down. Yeah. If I brought it to, if I do it to Watkins Glen, I'll bring it to Watkins Glen. I'll probably take a picture of it upside down there. Maybe see if there's a way I can get it out to the S's and do that there. So that might not be the end of the adventures of this particular 41 car here. So we'll find out. Yeah, it does look like the Matchbox mold with the tires. I'm with you. Although the rims, I mean, the rim portion kind of reminds me of the Racing Champions version, but the printing of the Goodyear is three-dimensional, kind of like the Matchbox ones. There you go. You can kind of see that a little bit clearer. There you go. Kind of get a better view at that one. So yeah. The other thing was interesting. When this one came, it did come in the box, and I took it out. This screw at the front here was worn out, so the front, so this lip was like coming down. The body kind of curves naturally a little bit. So this screw popped out. I had to really jam it back in there so that it didn't come loose. It kind of looked like a splitter when it wasn't screwed in place, but kind of it's back to Team Valence on this one. There we go. It comes into focus a little bit. So yeah. But yeah. So anyway, we'll do our NASCAR section here. Alrighty. Okay. Yes, I think we got some interesting. This question I don't think has come up yet. Alrighty. First question for the NASCAR section. What driver won the inaugural Craftsman Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway? Don't look it up. Go ahead and jump right in. What driver won the inaugural Craftsman Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway? Alrighty. What driver won the inaugural Craftsman Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway? That is our first question for the evening. I'll kind of go through the chat here too and see if there's anything else to talk about there. Yeah, the 22, Michael Jensen. Yes, he heard the comment there. Correct that Austin Wayne Self was not at the track. I could confirm that. Yeah, they didn't even make the trip out there because, of course, Austin's wife Jennifer is expecting their first child. And it's a family-owned team, so I'm sure that means the rest of the family wasn't going to bother coming out and putting somebody else in the truck there. So that was the situation. Substitute Tony with Jamie McMurray, Ryan Idias. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. McMurray did a really good job. What was it? Was it Charlotte or was it Gateway that he was broadcasting? Whichever one he did seem to do a solid job. So, yeah. And yeah, Charles Peterson. Yeah, I was saying mild-mannered. I mean, certainly not Tony himself, but he sounds that way. See, again, Ernie Irvin's not mild-mannered either. He'll go out there and he will scramble some eggs. I mean, that's just kind of the way he is. Same thing with Stewart. Yeah, but I mean, you wouldn't know it. My point is, you wouldn't know it from just hearing his voice. It's there's other similarities in that sense. Let's see. Yeah, the Clint Boyer thing. Why he wasn't in the booth, I have no idea. I don't have any news on that end. I don't remember anybody talking about it. And yeah, I paid very little mind to the broadcast. Another thing I want to mention in terms of broadcasting, and I posted this on Twitter a bit. Vince Welch was pretty busy on the weekend when Carson Hocevar wrecked. We didn't really talk about that. Kudos to him for going for the pole. I mean, it was freaky that he backed the truck in the wall. I mean, right when I talked with Jade Buford was when the truck rolled up, and I just saw him go by in the background. I have the audio of the interview. You probably hear it in the background. He rolled right past us there, and he came out and he was just like banging his fist on the roof of the truck and just really broken up with that. But the Nice Motorsports team came together great and got that truck piece back together. Did not have to go to a backup. Did not have to. I mean, did have to lose the pole because the unapproved adjustments thing came up on that point. It wasn't for a backup truck. And Suarez did apparently come in and take over for Hocevar in stage one. But Hocevar is still smiling after the race. Good to see. But again, much like a lot of other examples at Sears Point, drivers that come into the race with injuries and having to face a rather daunting obstacle of competing in a road course. This was definitely the latest example of that there, too. Alrighty. The question once again here: what driver won the inaugural Craftsman Truck Series race at Texas Motor Speedway? We've got a couple guests here: Mike Skinner and Ron Hornaday. So far, that's the only ones I'm seeing here at the moment. The answer is the late Kenny Irwin Jr. is the correct answer. Kenny Irwin Jr. I think it was 97 was the first year, so that would have been when he was driving the 98 truck back then. Kenny Irwin Jr. is the correct answer. Next question. What year did King Richard win his fifth NASCAR Winston Cup championship? What year did King Richard win his fifth NASCAR Winston Cup championship? Yeah, it would have been cool if he ran the whole race, but yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, just coming off the surgery and everything. I mean, that it's there's only so much on that, but that was it was still tremendous. I mean, that was another story that was getting plenty of media attention. It seemed like everywhere he went and everywhere Ross Chastain went, they were getting plenty of coverage in that one way or the other. What year did King Richard win his fifth NASCAR Winston Cup championship? That's our next question here. I guess it's for 72, 74, 70, 73. There we go. What year did King Richard win his fifth NASCAR Winston Cup championship? Alrighty, here we go. And the answer is 1974. 74. Oh, 611 Hornet. You just got in under the line there. You got it. Charles Peterson looks like you got it first. So there you go. Alrighty. All right. Actually, this we might use this category the next couple shows here. That'll be interesting. Who? Next question is here. Who was the first NASCAR driver to make the field for an Indy 500 race? Who was the first NASCAR driver to make the field for an Indy 500 race? The first driver to make the field for an Indy 500. Let's check in something here. Pensacola. I was just looking at the Superstar Racing Experience schedule here, and this weekend, obviously, they're doing the Truck Series race in Knoxville, and the Cup Series and Xfinity Series are off this weekend. But the Superstar Racing Experience begins at the Five Flags Speedway, home of the Snowball Derby. And I'm thinking about like which way to do a show. Like I don't really do Superstar Racing Experience coverage so much. William, I believe, is taking that on this year because he did that last year with the Xfinity Series. But if you guys like, we could do. I was thinking originally of doing a show after the Knoxville race, but if you want it after SRX instead, we can do that. Hard to tell there, but we could figure something out on that. Who was the first NASCAR driver to make the field for an Indy 500 race? Does anybody know what time the Superstar Racing Experience race is? Is it Sunday night? I'm surprised it's on Sunday. I thought it was going to be like kind of maybe they're going to cram it in on Saturday before the Knoxville race. Do we actually have an SRX driver lineup yet? That's a good question. I saw Newman tweet about it today, but I don't know if that's I don't know if they have the full lineup or not. Who was the first NASCAR driver to make the field for an Indy 500 race? You got Donnie Allison, Joe Weatherly, Curtis Turner, Cale Yarborough. I would assume active at the time. Yes, Section 8. I think, yeah. Foyt, you got? Let's see. The answer is indeed Marshall Teague is the correct answer. So it must be well back in history. Marshall Teague is the correct answer. Yeah, these are difficult ones. These are difficult ones. We might, yeah, like I say, we might use this category more often. Next question here. Who has had more Winston Cup starts than any woman in NASCAR history through 1998? Who has had more Winston Cup starts than any woman in NASCAR history through 1998? Yeah, diecast reviews. These are tricky questions. There's a lot of Indy 500 stats that are hard to track down. I think that's too much history for any one person. Who's had more Winston Cup starts than any woman in NASCAR history through 1998? Doo-doo. Alrighty. Do. Alrighty, just a moment longer here, and we'll get the results on this. 8 p.m. Eastern start time for SRX. Thank you, Donnie. Excellent. Who's had more Winston Cup starts than any other woman in NASCAR history through 1998? And the answer is Janet Guthrie. Janet Guthrie, you all got that there. RD Fox 76, you got it. Diecast Reviews, Charles Peterson, 611 Hornet, Matthew Watkins, A, and Maserati 9. There you go. Absolutely. Yeah, might do the show just after Knoxville since it's more of a NASCAR thing, but we will get some SRX coverage after the fact there. So we'll probably do it on Saturday night there. I think that'll probably be an easier show rather than do another Sunday night deal there. I think that's a little. Those Sunday night ones are a little tricky, especially if it's not a holiday on Monday. If it's a holiday on Monday, I'm more inclined to do it that way. But maybe for this one, we'll just do a Saturday show instead. It's up to you guys. I mean, whatever works for you guys, for sure. But that kind of works for me. What NASCAR legend was the mechanic for the car that won 1936's Daytona Beach race? What NASCAR legend was the mechanic for the car that won 1936's Daytona Beach race? Got to go way back in history. read it one more time here. What NASCAR legend was the mechanic for the car that won 1936's Daytona Beach race? Oop. Excuse me. Bill France, Smokey Eunuch. All right, let's see. Red Voigt. I saw Ray Fox earlier. That was a good guess. So we'll see. Here we go. What NASCAR legend was the mechanic for the car that won 1936's Daytona Beach race? The answer, Big Bill France Sr. Big Bill France. Charles Peterson, you're the first one to get it right ahead of Bean Boy 89. Alrighty, we'll do one more question here for tonight, and that will wrap things up for this week's show here. Alrighty, here we go. Last question for the evening here, folks. Who? Oh, goodness. I'm so sorry, folks. That wasn't the question. Too much stuff in the air right now. Allergy season has been a misery here lately. But we'll get right through it here. Who was president of the International Speedway Corporation after Bill France Sr.? I'll read that again. Who was president of the International Speedway Corporation after Bill France Sr.? All right, for our last one for this evening. Let's see if you guys got that. Who was president of the International Speedway Corporation after Bill France Sr.? The question, how much can Brock sneeze? Exactly. There you go. I need to get Mucinex as a sponsor for the show. Maybe we'll it'll straighten out both things. Who knows? I don't know. It's been crazy. Not planning on that being a new weekly feature for the show. That was another thing that was kind of fun this weekend. Last night after the race, I was glad I was able to see that the Truck Series thing was such an arduous story to try to pick apart, as you can tell from talking about it tonight, and the fact that there's even more to it. I didn't get out of the media center until like 10:30 that night, 10:30 Pacific. So we're talking like 1:30 Eastern time in the morning, like race morning. And we didn't get back until like 1:30 in the morning on Sunday. And so that's why we did a later start, and we got stuck in the traffic and so forth. But yesterday, I mean, it was still light out when we left. It was maybe like 7 o'clock thereabouts. And we saw the new Jurassic Park movie, and it was okay. It was okay. It was a lot better than the second one. Second one I thought was terrible. It was kind of a joke. It kind of feels like a Mystery Science Theater movie. But this one's not bad. I won't spoil it, but it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing. It's a decent enough one. I think Top Gun was a lot better. Top Gun Maverick was fantastic. I'm almost willing to see that one again. But yeah. Who was president of the International Speedway Corporation after Bill France Sr.? That's the next question there. Same time all 6 weeks. Good to know. Yeah, I like that they make it interesting. Alright, I guess this is for Bill Jr., Lisa France, Jim France. All right, here we go. The president of the International Speedway Corporation after Bill France Sr., the answer is Jim France. Jim France is the correct answer. There you go. Jim France is the correct answer. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I really do appreciate everybody that followed along with our coverage over the Sonoma Raceway weekend. It's a huge event on our calendar, something to look forward to every year. Jill Gregory and Matt Humphrey and the others there, are tremendously helpful there at the track and the folks at NASCAR. And it's really enjoyable when it comes over to the local track there at the same time. Our next trackside coverage is going to be in October, at least what we're looking at for the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. and doing some more coverage out there, and then leading into Phoenix shortly after. So the rest of the summer, we'll be doing these shows at the usual regularly scheduled time, usually about 15 or 20 minutes after the conclusion of each Cup Series race. In the case of this week, I think we're going to do it after Saturday's truck race in Knoxville, and we'll do probably a shorter truck show and kind of sum that up there as well. And we'll see if it turns out to be quite as crazy as last year's was. But yeah, it was a fun weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed following it at the same time. A lot of interesting stories, not the least of which being Suarez's victory. And I think a lot of things to look forward to as we now no longer have Fox broadcast for the rest of this year on the Cup Series side, at the very least. And we'll see what NBC does from here coming up. And I'm sure we'll have many more thoughts on what's happening here from Nashville and so forth. But in the meantime, stay tuned for more content on lastcar.info, as well as the website here on YouTube. If you're interested in bonus content, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. Congratulations to the magnet winner. We just gave that away earlier today. I just dropped it in the mail today. If you haven't seen the drawing, that video has now been posted on Twitter. So if you're in the Patreon, I suggest you check that out there and see if you got something coming to you in the mail. In the meantime, our next show is going to be this next Saturday after the conclusion of the Truck Series race at Knoxville. So have a fantastic week, everyone. And thank you so much for all of your support. We can't do it without you, that's for sure. And thanks again to Brad Perez for bringing the NASCAR logo around the track there at Sears Point. That was an awesome experience for sure. So take care, everyone. We'll get the intro for you here in just a moment.